I never thought I'd find myself abandoned by my own daughter. I never imagined the man she married would tear away my dignity when I was at my weakest, and that she'd let him. But what they didn't realize was that life had saved one final move for me, and when I made it, everything turned upside down. Get ready, because this isn't just a story you're about to hear. It's a reckoning. Comment below where you're tuning in from, and make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. My name is Margaret. I'm 58 now, and up until recently, I believed in something called unconditional love, especially when it came to family. I built my entire world around my husband and our daughter, Amanda. Every meal I cooked, every holiday I arranged, every dollar I put aside, it was all for them. When cancer took my husband last year, it felt like the ground disappeared under me. But I kept telling myself, at least I still had Amanda. I still had my little girl. I sold the house my husband and I had built together in Cedar Park, just north of Austin. Too many memories lingered. Too many nights waking up, hoping to hear his voice from the kitchen. Amanda and her husband, Chad, offered to take me in. Or really, Amanda did. Chad barely glanced up from his phone when I moved my things in. I did my best to stay invisible. I kept to my tiny room in the back, cooked, cleaned, ran errands, anything to be useful and stay out of their way. But Chad always made me feel like a burden. His looks were filled with irritation, like I was a splinter stuck in his skin. It started small. He'd roll his eyes when I asked something, change the channel while I was in the middle of watching a show. Once, as he brushed past me in the hallway, I heard him mumble, "Freeloader." I tried to tell myself, I imagined it, but deep down, I knew. Amanda never said anything. I'd look at her, waiting for some support, even just a word, but she would shrug it off. "He's stressed," she'd say. "Work's been tough." I swallowed my pride and kept quiet. That's what mothers are supposed to do, right? But then came that night, the night that broke me. We were sitting around the dinner table. I had made chicken pot pie, Chad's favorite. Amanda scrolled through her phone, Chad sipping his usual beer. The silence was thick. Then, out of nowhere, Chad looked up and said, "Maybe it's time we admit this isn't temporary. We're not running a charity here." Amanda froze. I just stared at him. "What do you mean?" I asked. He smirked. "I mean, how long is this supposed to go on? You're not working. You're not helping with bills. We didn't agree to take on extra mouths." My heart stopped. I looked at Amanda, desperate. She couldn't even meet my eyes. "Maybe it's best," she mumbled, "if you find something more stable, for everyone's sake." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stood up, went to my room, and packed my life into 2 small suitcases. That's all I had left. I didn't cry while I packed. The tears only came later, standing outside their building with the cold wind cutting through my coat, realizing I had nowhere to go. Amanda didn't come out to say goodbye. Chad didn't even pretend to care. I sat on the curb for an hour, my phone dead, my heart just as empty. I remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to be erased. That night, I found a cheap motel, the kind where the wallpaper peels and the vending machine eats your quarters. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how life had turned so cruel, wondering what terrible thing I had done to deserve this kind of loneliness. The next morning, I sent Amanda a message. "I understand. I love you always." She never replied. A week later, I tried again. Then again after that. Birthdays passed. Little updates, silence. 3 months crawled by. Each day dragged longer than the last. I tried applying for work, anything. But nobody wanted to hire a grieving widow, nearing 60, with no recent experience. I thought about cleaning houses, babysitting, but my body just couldn't keep up like before. The loneliness was crushing, but worse than that was the shame. I had poured my entire life into that girl. How could she turn away from me so easily? One evening, digging through an old box of family things, just looking for something to feel close to, I found it, my mother's old diary. I hadn't looked at it in years, maybe ever, but something made me open it. Sitting on the edge of that creaky motel bed, I flipped through the pages. That's when I stumbled across it. A name, a secret, a truth that would change everything. I remember my hands shaking, my heart racing, because for the first time in months, I wasn't just a forgotten mother anymore. I was something else entirely, and for the first time in a long while, I smiled. They had stripped everything from me, but they had no idea what was about to hit them. This was the result, a result that had been a long time coming. Now, I had a plan, not just about fixing the building, but a slow, quiet chess game. Each move deliberate, every step carefully thought out. With the LLC fully formed and the property legally mine, I started making repairs. Small things at first. Leaks, broken locks, flickering lights. Chad didn't even notice. He was too busy throwing fits about the rent hike, firing off angry emails at the property manager, demanding explanations. But I knew him. I knew how his pride worked. Moving would feel like a defeat to him, and Amanda, as usual, would just follow his lead. So I kept at it. I updated the building signage, added a security camera near the lobby, refreshed the tenants' mailboxes, all now showing the name of my company, ML Holdings, named after Margaret Louise. No one knew who was really behind it. Then the inspection notices went out. Annual. Mandatory. Chad fired off a furious message through the tenant portal, full of threats and angry rants. I smiled when I read it. He was coming apart, and I didn't even need to lift a hand. Meanwhile, I was becoming someone new. I wore my hair differently, dressed sharper, walked with more purpose. I started attending small business meetups under a fake name, learning about real estate, making connections. Nobody asked about my past. They only saw a composed woman with sharp eyes and money to spend. Sometimes, hiding in plain sight is the best disguise. One morning, I walked right past Amanda and Chad in the parking lot after a tenant meeting. I kept my sunglasses on, my hair tucked in a tight bun, paperwork in hand. Amanda barely glanced at me. Chad didn't recognize me at all. Later that night, sipping tea in my living room, I thought about how strange it was to walk right past your own child and be invisible, not because you were weak, but because you had become stronger than they remembered. They couldn't see me because they only remembered the version of me they could control, and she was long gone. Amanda kept calling, soft voicemails. "Hi, Mom. Just wondering if maybe we could talk." I didn't answer, not out of cruelty, but because she needed to feel the absence she had created. Whenever doubt crept in, I'd open my mother's diary, rereading the same line over and over. Margaret will never know. She must never know. But I knew now, and that knowledge was a kind of armor no one could break. I wasn't the woman begging to stay anymore. I was the woman who owned the roof they lived under. I used to think revenge was about getting even, but really, it's about restoring balance. Justice, without the fire. A correction, not a war. Still, when I saw Chad's furious email about the rent hike, a small spark of satisfaction lit up inside me. Subject, rent increase. This is absolutely unacceptable. This must be a mistake. Tripling our rent? That's extortion. He signed it. Chad D. Harmon. like his name carried weight. I read it 3 times before forwarding it to my property manager with a simple note. Please reply with Standard Clause C about market rate adjustments. No exceptions. Chad wasn't just angry. He was stunned. His ego had no room for the idea that someone could outsmart him. He was used to calling the shots, and the idea of answering to an invisible landlord was driving him crazy. Amanda tried calling again that night. The voicemail was raw this time. Mom, I know you're not answering, but I really need to talk to you. Things are bad. Chad's lashing out. We're struggling. I miss you. Her voice cracked at the end. For a moment, my fingers hovered over the phone. I could have called back, told her it would be okay, promised to fix things, but I didn't, because it wasn't okay, and I couldn't keep patching the holes she helped tear open. Amanda had let Chad throw me out like I was some bill they couldn't pay. Now, with the pressure on her, she remembered my number. No, let her sit with the silence a little longer. The next week, I approved more upgrades. New exterior paint, better lighting in the halls, landscaping improvements. Chad's rent wasn't a punishment. It was funding better living for everyone else. And the irony, everyone else was benefiting. Chad just couldn't see it. He started slipping angry notes under the office door. The water pressure sucks. Trash piling up. What are we paying for? Every note was ignored. Amanda stopped leaving voicemails and started sending short texts. Hey, can we talk? Then nothing. Meanwhile, I watched the bank statements. ML Holdings was steady, profitable. The other tenants were respectful and paid on time. Only Chad made noise. And Amanda was caught in the storm. Then, the quarterly report came in. Photos attached showed the state of Chad and Amanda's unit. Mildew in the bathroom, cracked kitchen tiles, mail piling up. They were cutting corners, living frugally. I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. And Chad was losing his grip fast. Word around the building was he had taken on extra shifts at work. Amanda had been seen crying on the back steps. They were falling apart. And I hadn't said a word. I kept thinking about that. How long I had spent begging Amanda to see what Chad really was, to see what she was becoming by staying with him. Now, they were choking on their own silence, and I was watching from above. Literally, my new apartment overlooked their courtyard. A safer building, a higher floor, a view they could never afford. I didn't watch them constantly, just enough to remind myself. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined the betrayal. What they did deserved consequences. And yet, sometimes at night, I found myself sitting by the window, holding my phone, staring at Amanda's last message. I really need you. The mother in me ached, but the woman I had become knew. This was just the beginning. I always thought heartbreak came with loud moments, slammed doors, screaming matches, public scenes. But real heartbreak, it's quiet. It's a voicemail you don't return, a message you don't read. The silent space between you and someone who once called you Mommy. Amanda's calls eventually stopped. The texts slowed, but the trouble on their end only got worse. From what I heard from the building staff, things inside their apartment had turned toxic. Chad snapping at everyone, refusing maintenance requests, demanding unnecessary inspections, desperate to find someone to blame. Amanda looked exhausted, worn down. I didn't feel joy watching this unfold. I didn't celebrate. It wasn't about watching them hurt. It was about something more painful. Seeing my daughter willingly stay trapped and call it love. One day, the property manager sent a noise complaint report. The neighbor downstairs had heard yelling. A fight about losing control, about whose fault it was. Chad stormed out and didn't come back until morning. Amanda stayed inside the apartment, lights off, curtains drawn. I waited, not for him, for her. It took 2 more days. 2 long, aching days. Then, just as the sun was setting one evening, the intercom buzzed. "Hi, this is Amanda Harmon. I was wondering if Margaret, my mom, lives here." My heart froze. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the screen. Then I pressed the door release. 10 minutes later, a soft knock at my door. I opened it. There she was, a ghost of the girl I had raised. Pale, makeup smudged, shirt wrinkled. She looked 20 years older than she was. We stared at each other for a long time. Then she whispered, "Hi, Mom." I stepped aside. She walked in carefully, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. I brewed 2 cups of tea. I didn't ask why she was there. I didn't ask how she was. I just handed her the cup and sat down across from her. "I don't know where to start," she said, voice trembling. I stayed silent. She looked down. "Chad's, he's angry, all the time. Blames the rent, blames me, blames the neighbor's dog, for God's sake." Still, I said nothing. "I thought I was doing the right thing. Back then," she said, her voice breaking. "When we asked you to leave, asked, like you had a choice. I just wanted to keep the peace." Chad said. She stopped. "He said you'd never leave unless we forced you." I took a sip of tea. "I miss you," she whispered, "but I don't know how to fix it." I studied her face, every wrinkle and twitch. She was searching for forgiveness, but afraid to ask. So, I gave her the only thing I could: silence. Because sometimes, silence is safer than truth. We sat like that for almost an hour. She didn't ask for help, didn't ask for money. She just wanted to be close to me again, and I let her. When she finally stood to leave, she reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," she said, tears brimming. I didn't say it back. I just held her hand a second longer than she expected. She pulled away first. Then, crying, she left. I didn't cry, but when the door clicked shut, I sat down heavily, gripping the warmth of the teacup. She had come. She had looked me in the eye, and I knew then. The cracks were beginning to show. She had always been smart, but being smart didn't always mean being brave. Now, she looked like someone who had finally seen the truth and hated what she saw. "I didn't speak," I said. "Not yet. I miss you," she whispered back. "But I don't even know how to be around you anymore." I tightened my grip on the mug. "You left," she said, her voice breaking. "And I let him force you out." I finally spoke. "No, Amanda, you didn't just let him. You stood with him." That stopped her in her tracks. She blinked, her lips parting slightly as if she wanted to argue, to defend herself. But there was nothing left to defend. I stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the night. "I begged for your voice that night," I said. "One word, just one. But you stayed silent." Behind me, I heard a shaky breath leave her. "I didn't think it would get this bad," she said quietly. "I thought I could handle him." "You can't handle a man like that," I said softly. "You either survive him or you leave." She stayed silent. She didn't need to say anything. We sat there together, 2 women linked by blood, but not trust. At least, not yet. Maybe not ever. When she finally rose to leave, she set the mug down carefully, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I just needed to remember what safety felt like." I walked her to the door. She paused, then suddenly turned and hugged me. I didn't hug her back right away. When I did, it was slow, cautious, like trying to hold a fragile memory without breaking it. When she let go, she didn't say goodbye. She just gave me one last look and left. And when the door clicked shut behind her, Something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a small flicker of something that could, maybe one day, grow into it, if she let it. The invitation went out on a Tuesday morning. Quiet, professional, without any fuss. A notice for a mandatory meeting to discuss building renovations, set for the next week. Questions were welcome. I knew Chad would show up. He wouldn't be able to resist. He wanted a face to blame. He had no idea he'd be walking straight into the hands of the woman he tossed aside like garbage. On the day of the meeting, I arrived early, dressed in a charcoal gray blazer and dark jeans. Simple, clean, almost unrecognizable. My hair, soft and wavy, brushed my shoulders. I looked nothing like the woman who once sat at Amanda's kitchen table, begging for a scrap of dignity. Slowly, tenants trickled into the common room. Some curious, some annoyed, most indifferent. And then Chad arrived, swaggering in like he was ready for a fight. Amanda trailing behind him, like a shadow. He didn't even glance around the room. He made a beeline for the property manager at the front. "Where is she?" he barked. "I want to talk to whoever's in charge today." The manager stayed calm. "All questions will be addressed after the presentation," he said. Chad scoffed. Amanda kept her eyes down. I sat near the back, quiet and unnoticed. The presentation started. The usual updates: new security system, landscaping improvements, better insulation, practical upgrades, all partially funded by the rent increases Chad hated so much. Then the manager paused. "We'd like to thank ML Holdings for their investment in revitalizing the property. The owner is here today for any questions." I stood up, heads turned. I walked slowly to the front, heart pounding like a steady drumbeat in my chest. Chad's face twisted in confusion, then horror. Amanda's mouth fell open in shock. I turned to face the room. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Margaret. I'm the owner of this building." The room went silent. Chad shot up so fast, his chair scraped the floor. "You?" he yelled. "This is a joke, some kind of trick." I looked at him, really looked, saw the cracks in him, the sweat at his collar, the puffiness under his eyes, the fear. "No trick," I said softly. "Just business." He stepped toward me, furious. "You set this up. You raised the rent. You're ruining us." I stayed calm. "I gave you a roof. I made improvements. I treated every tenant the same. What I didn't do was forget." He opened his mouth to argue, but I turned back to the crowd. "If anyone has questions about the changes, I'm happy to answer them after the meeting." "Thank you." I stepped aside. The meeting continued, but the tension stayed thick in the room. Chad stayed standing, trembling with rage. Amanda sat frozen, hands tight in her lap, eyes wide with tears. When the meeting ended, tenants came over to thank me, to shake my hand, to ask questions. Some had guessed, most hadn't. Chad waited until the room was almost empty. Then he stormed over to me. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "This is nothing. You've made an enemy." I met his stare without flinching. "No, Chad," I said. "You made yourself my enemy the day you looked me in the eye and decided I didn't matter." Amanda suddenly stepped between us. "Chad, stop," she said. He turned to her, stunned. "What did you just—" "I said stop," she repeated, louder. "She's not your enemy. You are." He stared at her like she'd slapped him. Amanda turned back to me, her voice shaking. "I didn't know," she said. "About the building, the money, any of it." I nodded. "I know." "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Because you needed to see it for yourself, not just hear it," I said. She blinked back tears. Chad scoffed and backed away. "You two deserve each other," he spat. "No," I said quietly. "She deserves better." And then I turned and walked away. For the first time since that horrible night in their kitchen, I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge, not satisfaction, but real power. Quiet, steady, and mine. 4 days later, Amanda showed up at my door again. This time, she was holding something that made my knees go weak. A worn, faded leather book with a torn corner and a fragile spine. My mother's diary. I opened the door without saying a word. She stepped inside, eyes wide and trembling. "I found it in my closet," she said. "Last time I visited, you must have left it behind." She placed it carefully on the coffee table like it was something sacred. And to me, it was. "I read it," she said, her voice tight. My heart stopped. "I wasn't trying to pry," she added quickly. "I just recognized her handwriting. I was looking for something that made sense." Silence hung between us, heavy and still. "I didn't know about Harold Sterling," she whispered, "or the money, or the trust, or any of it." I nodded slowly. "I didn't either, not until I had nothing left to lose." Her voice broke. "Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why let me believe you were powerless?" I met her eyes, and this time she didn't look away. "Because I was powerless," I said. "The night you closed the door on me, I had no plan, no money, no safe place to cry without someone telling me to be quiet." Amanda flinched. "I found the diary at my lowest point, when I was counting coins for dinner, when I hadn't spoken to a soul in a week. That diary didn't just tell me who I was. It reminded me I mattered, that my mother loved me and fought for me, even when she couldn't show it." Amanda sat down, her hands twisted tightly in her lap. "I don't know how I became the kind of daughter who could do what I did," she said. "I keep asking myself that." I walked to the window and stared out at the quiet street below. "It didn't happen all at once," I said. "It was little choices, letting things go, choosing peace over truth, believing love meant loyalty, even when it hurt." She stood and came to me. "I left him," she said. The words hit like an explosion. "He tried to go through my things again, my laptop, my bag. I told him no. He screamed, packed his stuff, and left. Said he'd be back. I changed the locks the next day." I turned to her, stunned. "I don't know who I am without him," she admitted. "But I'd rather find out than keep disappearing." A heavy silence passed between us. Then she looked down at the diary. "You didn't deserve what I did. What we did. I can't undo it, but I want to try." He panicked, and I knew it, because Amanda called me 2 days later, voice trembling, telling me, "He's gone." He had packed up while she was at work, left a note rambling about being hunted, blaming me for ruining his life. "He ruined his own," I said quietly. Amanda went silent for a moment. Then she apologized again, forever thinking he deserved her silence. "You were scared," I told her. "I've been there. Fear shrinks you, but you don't have to stay small." Not long after, Chad tried to lash out on social media, posting vague, bitter rants about betrayal and corruption. He never mentioned names. He couldn't afford to. Not after the second letter from my lawyer warned of more legal trouble if he kept going. After that, he went quiet, at least publicly. Privately, I knew he would never forget that the woman he threw out with nothing now owned the building he once thought he controlled, the lease under his name, and every key he had slammed a door behind. Amanda, though, was changing. Within a month, she moved out, found a small studio close to work, started therapy, even joined an art class. She painted something for me, too. A phoenix, deep reds and golds, and I hung it proudly above my fireplace. We spoke more now. Not every day, but when we did, it was real. No more pretending. The final piece came in an envelope. Another letter. This time from Mr. Goldstein. "Congratulations, Margaret," it read. The building transfer was complete. The tenants had signed. The lawsuit with Harmon settled in my favor. I was now free to do whatever I wanted. Sell, keep, rebuild. I folded the letter gently, pressed it against my heart. This wasn't about revenge or money. It was about reclaiming my story, my name, my power. The next morning, I called a realtor. It was time to end this chapter and step into a life I didn't have to survive anymore. I could finally live it. By late spring, I sold the building. The final paperwork was signed quietly. No ceremony, just a pen click, a handshake, and the heavy burden of betrayal and grief finally lifting from me. The money hit my account the next day, but instead of celebrating, I wrote a large check. Half of the proceeds went to a shelter for women and children. The kind of place I wish I'd known about the night I stood alone with 2 suitcases. I asked them to name a wing after my mother, the Elaner house, to honor the woman who had fought for me in silence. The other half, I used to buy a small house. Nothing fancy, just a sweet little 2-bedroom on the street where I grew up in Cedar Park. Oak trees out front, a porch swing, a garden space if I ever wanted to grow tomatoes. Amanda helped me move. She didn't say much, and neither did I. After we finished unpacking, we sat on the porch swing. She tucked her legs under herself, gazing down the familiar street. "I used to ride my bike here," she said softly, "before everything got so complicated." I nodded. "You were always safe here," I reminded her. "I forgot what that felt like," she whispered. We didn't talk about Chad. We didn't have to. His chapter had ended without drama, just silence. He disappeared into some new life, leaving behind his threats after signing an NDA. He became a ghost. Amanda stayed for dinner that night. We made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, just like we used to. She laughed when she burned one, and I laughed when she tried to blame the pan. It was the first true laughter we had shared in years. Later, after she left, I stood at the window, tea cooling in my hands, staring at the moonlit lawn, and for the first time in so long, I said the words out loud. "I forgive you." Not to Amanda, to myself, because that was the hardest part. Not surviving the fire, but realizing I had never been the fire they tried to put out. I had been the spark they underestimated. They tried to teach me that silence was weakness, but I learned to wield it. They tried to erase me. Instead, I became unforgettable. I sat down on the couch, opened my mother's diary one last time, and tucked a note inside for Amanda to find one day. "You don't need their love to be worthy. You don't need their approval to be strong. You only need the truth. And to never, ever forget who you are." The clock ticked softly in the background. My tea was cold, but my heart was finally warm. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to conquer. I just needed to be exactly who I was meant to be. And now, finally, I was home. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.